The glory of old barns. The poet Bell Hooks puts it this way: the glory in old barns, surpassing time, wood gray, shadowed black, faded colors, places where painted signs tell of products no longer in use. Standing or falling down, these structures carry the weight of history, work done and undone, memories of toil and torment. There was bounty here, tears for sowing, lamentations for the dead, all fragments that remain remind us. Give thanks. Give thanks. Gather praise. Dr. Cornel West from Princeton University asked two questions in a lecture that I heard him give online this week, and they resonate with me as I think of this story, The Glory of Old Barns. The first question is this: what kind of human being do I want to be? And the second question is, how do I want to live my life with whatever sense of character that I have? I grew up with Sunday rides, and we still take them. It's just a great way to relax after a very busy week. My father always complained about what he called Sunday drivers, which meant people who really drove really slowly. One of the things that I've noticed in some of the road trips that we have taken over time, and I find fascinating, are the old barns that remain in Maine. And there aren't a lot of them around here. But I'm thinking of what I guess was a barn. It certainly wasn't a house. At the corner in Penobscot, where across from the nursing home, there is this old structure. And on it is one of the faded signs of a product for gasoline. And the price is 62.9 cents a gallon. The weather-beaten building appears to be just standing there, bearing the weight of history. I'm always curious about buildings like that. Then I think about buildings that I've seen in Aroostook County, land of my forebears on the York side of the family, potato barns. And if you are going up the Route 1 to Presque Isle, on the way between Holton and Presque Isle are a number of potato barns, some of them old and active, and some of them look like they're on their last breath and about to collapse with a good northeast wind. I find them fascinating. Sometimes I say to Catherine, stop, get a picture of that. It looks like an interesting building. I wonder what its story is. I think to myself, and sometimes I say to Catherine, I wonder what happened to the family. Why wasn't it repaired? And then there are other barns in the county that are beautiful and magnificent. I'm thinking of a barn on an old farm on Main Street in Washburn. I was attracted to this barn. It is beautiful. It is well maintained. It's not active, but it's preserved. And on the front of the barn is this sign that says, established by Samuel Bugbee in 1847. And every year when Catherine and I go to the county to teach coursework, the first full week of July after the 4th, after class is over in an afternoon, I say, let's go and look at these, just sort of drive around and look at the area because my family roots are there. Across the street from this beautiful barn in Washburn is a cemetery, and year after year I was fascinated and continue to be fascinated by it. It was almost like something was calling me to go see that barn again. May sound a little strange, but it was intuitive. I got curious. I went on the internet and I Googled that barn. I figured anyone who had established by Samuel Bugbee in 1847, it was such a beautiful red barn, quintessential New England barn, I thought there's got to be something about it. And I found some literature about it and the story about the man Samuel Bugbee. And then, you know, I'm sure you've had an aha moment at times when something in your brain seems to go off and there's a growing recognition. There's a connection. And some synapse began to fire off in my brain that summer. And I thought to myself, my grandmother was born in Washburn, and my grandfather was born in Ashland. These are my father's parents. And I think my great-grandmother's birth name was Myrtle Bugbee. And so then I got on the genealogy piece of this. And lo and behold, I discovered that Samuel Bugbee, who established this beautiful farm, acre after acre after acre of potato fields and other things that he grew, was my great, 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 great grandfather. He was an interesting man, a supporter of Lincoln, one of the first Republicans in that area of Maine. He had a fascinating story, but it made sense to me on some DNA brain level, intuitive level, if I may say so, that there was something that connected me to that land, and it was my family's farm. No one ever told me this. I just had to find it out for myself. That barn, historic, preserved, well-maintained, is unlike some other barns that just simply sort of fall apart. I'm thinking of one other barn, and that's one on this island, owned by Loring Kidd, the Kidd family. Beautiful farm and barn. Again, well-maintained. A respect for the past, just like the one in Washburn. Now, this is an interesting story that Jesus tells. It begins with a family argument. I can just see it, can't you? You've got two brothers standing in the crowd, and Jesus is teaching. And one of them raises his voice, if not his hand, and says, "Hey, Jesus, tell my brother to give me my share of what our Father left us." Jesus had a very interesting response. He said, "Who gave me the authority to settle the argument between you and your brother?" You know, there's a lot of wisdom in that. I want you to think about that response for a moment. There's a wonderful sign on Madison Avenue Baptist Church in New York City this week. Susan Sparks, who's a comedian and a minister and an attorney, put that together. She's the pastor. She's marvelous. I can't say enough good about her. On the front of the church, there's a sign this week in the removable letter thing covered by glass, and it said that just because someone is having a dramatic moment in their lives doesn't mean you have to be a spectator. And I thought, that is so marvelous. You don't have to get involved in other people's drama. The wisdom of Jesus' response here was he did not get involved in settling the dispute between two people who are absolutely not connected to him. He said, "Who gave me the authority to settle that?" You know, it was sort of as though Jesus were saying, "Look, guys, you got to work that out for yourselves. I'm going to mind my own business." What wise advice. What a good example. It's so easy to get involved in someone else's drama. No, thank you. On Facebook, I put a little comment, speaks to my week, and let it go. Liked it. Then Jesus goes into a story. I mean, in the story, there is another story. And he said a rich man produced a big crop. And he said, the rich man said to himself, "What am I going to do?" Now, Jesus is telling the crowd this story. By the way, he had just admonished them, don't be greedy. And the rich man said, "I know what I'll do. I'll tear down the old barns. And I'll build bigger and better and more." And the story says, and God piped in and said, "You fool. You're going to die today, and now who are you going to leave everything to? What are you going to do with what you've accumulated?" It was sort of a you can't take it with you version response. The piece that I read and you patiently listened to this morning about our being enamored with the new is a critique on our culture. Throwaway relationships. Walking away from responsibilities. The new is attractive. It's appealing. It's titillating. But there's something to be said for the respect of the old. And it's a tad old-fashioned, but I'm going to lay it on you. We need to preserve those values that have been passed on to us generation after generation after generation. Cornell's West's words, "What kind of human being do I want to be?" It's sexy and interesting to go with the new. You don't like the person you're with, find someone else. That routinely happens on this island and other places. It's easy. You want a new life? Well, walk away from your kids. They're someone else's responsibility. Let the grandparents raise them. You're going to ride off into the sunset and do something else. And I'm saying that that's morally reprehensible. We need to preserve the welfare of our children and our lives and families. There's an important verse in the book of Proverbs. Remove not the ancient landmarks which our fathers have established. I'm saying that the fragmentation and the tearing down in the name of greed, selfishness, narcissism is unacceptable, and it is time for the church to respond. It is not enough. It is not appropriate to just walk away and give up the values and the core purposes for our existence. Jesus warned this bunch, don't be greedy. Be satisfied. Look at the practical advice. Take care of what you've been given. It's so easy to not appreciate that which we have. It is so easy to take for granted the ones who are the closest to us. It's also the easiest place to begin our criticism, where we get up in the morning and take for granted the most important people in our lives. I'm not saying we can't start over and do better, because the gospel says we can. But we continue on in our lives. But it begs the question, what kind of human being do I want to be? Do I just want to go out with the old and in with the new? Do I want to play to popular culture and have what the images of television or the media portray as what is beauty or honesty or truth? I don't think so. How do I want to live my life? How do I want to live my life? Cornel West says that in our culture, we're privatizing everything, financializing everything, and militarizing everything. We need to look at our values as a country and a nation. You realize that 44% of minority children in the United States live in poverty, that 22% of all children in America live in poverty. The great W.E. Du Bois, author of the Souls of Black Folks, born in 1868, died in 1963, said that any struggle for freedom requires that we face 4 questions. Number 1, how shall integrity face oppression? Number 2, what does honesty do in the face of deception? Thirdly, what does decency do in the face of insult? And lastly, what does virtue do in the face of brutal force? The glory of Old Barnes. The word glory, according to the Random House College Dictionary that I consulted this morning in an actual book, not print online, said that glory is that which by common consent we give honor. It is that which is beautiful and resplendent. We need to value our elders in this nation and not be enamored just with youth. We need to make sure that as we age, and as Charles Stevens said, and this is sure true because I look in the mirror, we don't hit older age instantly. it sort of just grows on us. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I say, who am I? I looked at the crow's feet in my forehead last night and said, what meaneth this? I feel young. I feel vibrant. I'm getting ready to go dance. I mean, I feel terrific. I don't feel my age. But I sure look like this white-haired old man. And I'm amazed, and I have some senior students in my classes, and when they fill out their paperwork, I find out I'm years older than they are. And I am nonplussed, to say the least. It's the continuity that's important. Remove not the ancient landmarks. Stick with that which builds our lives. The truth, virtue, truthfulness, honesty, commitment, stick-to-itiveness, tenacity. It's a little old-fashioned, but God, I hope that we, as Mary Oliver put in her poem, The Gift, this morning, will find out how happy, she writes, I am, lounging in the light, listening as the music floats by. And she said, I give thanks also for my mind, that the thought of giving a gift, she's speaking about the gift to the mockingbird. Mostly, I'm grateful that I take this world so seriously. I conclude with this question, and I offer it to you for your thought. The philosopher wrote these words, how then shall we live? Let us appreciate the aged, the historic, the foundational, and let us not be betrayed and seduced by every new wind of doctrine and idea that comes down the pike in popular culture. Amen and amen.